My name is Brittany Kaiser. I'm a data rights activist. I'm chair of the board of Griffin Digital Mining and the founder of the Own Your Data Foundation.
Okay, so Brittany, what brings you down here today?
So I came here in order to do a talk on the DeFi stage about the importance of data ownership and really looking at a much higher level at the reason why the decentralized revolution is so important, taking us from the extractive nature of legacy technologies through to a future where we actually own and control our digital lives and have the ability to empower ourselves instead of being taken advantage of by technology platforms.
And blockchain in decentralization specifically plays a very important role. That's correct, right?
Absolutely. The importance of decentralization really takes what we are used to in technology, which is that as soon as we use a platform, it is taking away as much of our value as possible, and instead flips that on its head, and we actually own all of the digital assets that we produce. We can control who they're distributed to and why and what they're used for, and actually have rights in a digital world in the same way where we would expect rights in our physical or analog lives.
Exactly. So talk a little on privacy and how decentralization will complement privacy going forward in the future app that we use.
So for me, instead of the word privacy, I like to use data protection, because what we're really looking for is to keep our personally identifiable information private, our name, our location, our address, our social security numbers. That should always be private. But we should be able to live our digital lives and still authenticate and tell people we are who we say we are. So digital identity and the ability to keep certain things private, but protect the rest of the data that we share in terms of deciding where it goes, who it's used by, what it's used for. That's what I'm really talking about. So I think data protection really encapsulates where we're going a little bit more, because we're still going to be sharing tons of data, but we're going to share it in a safe and secure and anonymized way.
Okay, and a lot of projects in the crypto sphere, they have a claim of decentralization, but often when you look closely, due to them having certain regulatory hoops that they have to jump through, or the way that the user interfaces with their back end, talk a little bit on the, I've heard it be described as a spectrum of decentralization. Is true 100% decentralization, a viable product line for the regular folk?
So I definitely think it is viable, and we're finally, right now, in this period of time where truly decentralized technologies are becoming large-scale enough for global adoption. That's why, as the chair of Griffin Digital Mining, I've been specifically working on building large-scale infrastructure for truly decentralized technologies like the Bitcoin network. The truth is, we still need to scale up. We need more power sources around the world that are sustainable and green to create the hardware data centers that will actually process encrypted data through a lot of these Bitcoin and blockchain networks. And in order to do that, it's going to be a lot of investment, it's a lot of time, and over the next couple of years, we'll soon see entire governments and entire multinational corporations that are running on a blockchain backend. But we're only just getting to that point of mass adoption right now. I would say over the past few years, truly decentralized technologies have not been fully adopted by the world's largest organizations. And it's finally getting there. So I think we're going to see a very exciting 2022 where most Fortune 100 companies, actually most Fortune 1000 companies now have blockchain technology in development and implementation. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and Ethereum itself has a lot of smart contracts. A lot of projects are built on Ethereum using smart contract technology. And often, if you're able, or you have a budget or a team that can actually do an analysis on this smart contract, very often it comes, there are centralized components because they are being operated by regular corporations, and yet they are able to market themselves as decentralized. When the regular folk, they can't really determine. Anybody with a team can go and look behind the hood and say, this is not quite decentralized enough for my liking. So are we seeing like a compromise between the regular economy and this new crypto economy to try to build, find that area?
Well, I wouldn't exactly call it a compromise. I would kind of call it a stopgap, that we're in a period of time where a lot of companies have chosen to use private blockchains or blockchains that are not fully decentralized, just because that was the option that was given to them. Those were the devs that they had access to. And I think that truly decentralized platforms that are now scaling and have more devs and more teams that can actually help companies like that implement these technologies on the back end, that's really going to start to change everything. People, the more that they understand what they're using, what is truly decentralized and what is not, and what are those reasons or those points for centralization, people are going to choose fully decentralized as individual users. And so we'll see what the market says in the end.
Exactly. That's often because they want to reduce their risk, their tolerance to risk that there might be some, rug pull or what have you in the code. So I obviously, in my investigative studies into certain projects that I've looked into in the industry, I've come across Hex. Are you familiar with Hex?
A little bit. I've never used it personally.
Richard Hogg created a smart contract that basically is a certificate of deposit or blockchain. Hex back 40% APY, a lot of big claims, but Richard gets a lot of shit in the industry for being a scammer. Now, as far as I've seen, there's no scams unfolding with that particular project to date, and yet still he seems to be number one in the industry. Are you familiar with Richard?
I know who he is, and I know a little bit about Hex, but I've never used it myself. And, what I'd probably have to say about that, because I don't have deep knowledge about the platform and what his backend actually looks like, a lot of people are going to get hate and criticism, so it's up to him and his teams to prove whether they have long-term viability or not. And so I hope he's doing the right thing. Well, that's why I think third-party audits are so incredibly important. As someone who sits on the board of two companies that are intending to go public, I'm spending a lot of time with auditors, and I'm spending a lot of time working on third-party verifications. Everything from being able to verify that my Bitcoin mining company uses renewable energy to being able to actually prove that we have ESG strategies. So I think everyone in the blockchain industry that is actually intending to scale and to widely distribute services for multinationals and even whole countries need to be open to that type of audit. Transparency is always key, and if you can't completely open up your backend or even open source parts of your technology, then are you hiding something? Is it IP, or is there actually something that you're doing on the backend that your users wouldn't be excited about? So I think it's very important for us to look at who's actually open sourcing, who is actually allowing third parties to come in and have a look on the back end, and may the best man win.
And so to conclude, it seems you're optimistic about the future potential for decentralizing everything, essentially. Where do you see us in like 5 to 10 in the industry?
So in 5 to 10 years, I see that large-scale blockchain technologies will be the back end of what's running everything, and we won't need to run around and evangelize it so much. Right now, you wouldn't get people evangelizing the types of operating systems that are proliferated right now. People don't go around and evangelize iOS or Android in the way that the blockchain industry actually does. We are talking about back-end operating systems in a very technical way, and the general populace never is going to need to know what runs their phone or what runs the companies of the businesses that they choose to be a customer of. That eventually will not be important anymore, but what we will expect is that when we pick up a phone, when we log into a platform, when we use a company's services, when we use government services, that our personal data is private and protected, that the rest of the data that we are sharing, we know where it's going and what it's being used for, and if it's being monetized, that we're getting a piece of it. And that's, I think, going to come closer to 5 years than 10, but I think once we get to 10 years, we're really going to see that entire generational shift.